Shabbat Shalom. Remember how rainy it was last Sunday? It was great. Last Sunday, I saw a rainbow. It stretched across the sky. It was almost a full arc all the way across. Anyone else see it? Yeah? It was beautiful, right? I was in the car with my family at the time. "Look, kids, a rainbow!" I pointed, and my son was really excited too. "Mommy, I can almost see 2 rainbows," he said, noticing the aura of a second appearing above the first. But my daughter was constrained in her car seat with an appropriately fastened 5-point harness, and she couldn't crane her neck to see it. "Where, Mommy, where?" she asked. "Where's the rainbow?" For the littlest one in the car, the girl who wears hopeful rainbow barrettes in her hair and colorful unicorns on her shirt, the rainbow was hidden from view. It is a little bit eerie to read our Torah portion this week. Parshat Noach is only our second Torah portion of the new year, and it describes a flood so powerful that it wipes out the whole world, with the exception of Noah and his family. At God's specific instruction, their small crew builds an ark, loads it up with animals, and sails on the surface of the seas, while God makes quick work of demolishing most of creation. As the story goes, it rains and pours for 40 days and 40 nights. And then, at the discovery of dry land, God tries again. A second version of humanity and a new outlook. God promises not to destroy the earth by flooding ever again. As we watch the news this week, hurricanes are leaving a trail of devastation in the southeastern United States. The videos of pouring rains, trees bending to giant gusts of winds, and wreckage left in the wake of the storm make a far too compelling visual for this week's Parsha. I am sure that for those who are in the path of the storm, God's promise feels very far away. For those who return home to a pile of rubble, it may feel as though the storm actually has demolished their entire world. It has been 1 year since I was awoken in the middle of the night by a frantic text message from a member of my prior congregation. "Raging wildfires in Santa Rosa. What's going on with Camp Newman? And have you heard anything?" Of course, I hadn't heard anything, and in the middle of the night, there were no conclusive information to hear. It wasn't until later the next day that the rumors were confirmed. Of the 90 structures on the grounds of URJ Camp Newman, the Reformed Jewish summer camp that's local to the Bay Area, only 10 buildings were still standing. Over the years, Camp Newman has held personal and professional importance for me. The Beit Am, in the center of camp, was where I led my first ever Jewish educational programs. The Beit Tefillah, the outdoor prayer space, was where I first understood the power of Jewish camp. And the cabins where we lived and the stages where we sang and danced and prayed, they're all just gone. There's a saying at Camp Newman. It's on all the shirts, the stationery, the water bottles. Camp is life. The rest is just details. We at CBI know this sentiment well. We understand deeply the way that our spiritual life is enriched by the ruach and the joy of our own Camp Stein. And yet, when camp is life and camp burns down, how do we find meaning in the details that are left? Similarly, when a hurricane tears through town, drowning worldly possessions and demolishing homes, does God's promise to never destroy the world still apply? Talmud teaches that Olam noheg keminhago, that the world goes according to its way. I first studied this verse in 2005 after the enormity of Hurricane Katrina. Fire and rain, of both regular and epic proportions, are a part of how the world will turn. It is a part of how the world has always turned. No amount of praying or righteous mindset or turning off the news to ignore the devastating images will make weather systems more predictable or less severe. It is possible that our actions have contributed to making climate shifting more severe, but that is another sermon for another time. Tonight, instead, we hold close those whose worlds have crumbled. We imagine ourselves as Noah, stepping off the ark onto land that is at once familiar and yet unrecognizable. We see a house we have lived in that is no longer standing, a forest that we prayed in burned to the ground. Our worlds are not just physical. We've all had times when our familiar structures suddenly no longer stand as they once stood. We have lived life in the face of loss. We have rebuilt family in the aftermath of divorce. We have mended trust after a broken promise, found confidence after losing our jobs, or found faith when it seems that God is busy elsewhere. We have weathered the storms of our own lives, even as it felt that the walls of our world were crumbling down. And as Noah and his family step onto dry land and face their new normal, God draws a rainbow in the sky. Torah teaches, "I have set my bow in the clouds as a sign of the covenant between me and the earth. I will remember my covenant between me and you." The rainbow is a reminder of God's promise. The world will go according to its way, but when the storm clears, there is hope. Rabbi Samson Raphael Hirsch points out that a rainbow is a semicircle. The arc of colors allude to the completion of a circle. But even the clearest rainbow only ever meets half of that rounded potential. A covenant, or a promise, is a partnership between two parts of a whole. God can uphold God's part of the promise, but the rest of the promise, the completion of the circle, that part is up to us. The day that it felt like the fire had taken our home, the camp community gathered online. Hundreds of us found ourselves on Facebook Live, joining together in Shema and Hashkivenu, a sacred Camp Newman nightly ritual. Tears flowing from dorm rooms and living rooms and offices across the country, we saw that we were all alive and well. As we learned that awful day, this was camp. The people, the prayers, the way that Judaism comes to life. But the site of the fire, the burned out buildings, those were just the details. It becomes our responsibility then, as Olam noheg kaminhago, as the world goes according to its way, to remember our part of the promise, our responsibility for the other half of the rainbow. We are responsible even when the disaster is at a distance. As we learn more about the trauma that the hurricane leaves in its wake, we can send money and supplies. We can offer refuge and resources, and more than anything else, remember that it is as important to show up in this time of need as it was for the last one and the one before that. We are responsible when the disaster is in our midst, when the ashes of lives or jobs or buildings are still smoldering around us. Tikkun Olam is not just the responsibility to repair the whole world, but to be partners in repairing each individual world that we encounter. We may feel fatigued by the trauma of our times. It might feel like we can never do enough, be enough, or give enough. This hurricane is not the first of this season, and it probably won't be the last. But our part of the promise is remembering that each storm passing through feels like an entire world to those in its wake, And we can only complete the rainbow if we continue to show up, if we don't let the fatigue of feeling numb us to the world's way. May there never come a day when the youngest among us cranes her neck and still cannot find the rainbow. When a corner of our world is destroyed, no matter how small, let's be there with hammers and nails and an ark with room for all. Let's be there with gifts of tzedakah and time and patience and open arms. When we look for the rainbow that comes at the end of the storm, let's remember we are God's partners in rebuilding and God's partners in remembering the beauty. Shabbat Shalom.